The movie kicks off in the vibrant city of Chicago where Eddie, a resolute student focused on machinery, is fully immersed in a groundbreaking university project. His sole ambition is to build a hydrogen reactor capable of turning simple water into a mighty energy source. Parallel to his endeavors, Dr. Allister, the respected head of the university's laboratory and overseer of the project, delivers a passionate speech. He envisions a new world, forever changed by their new machine if they can make it operational. Despite the risks, Eddie's driven by his conviction, and he brings his initial prototype to the laboratory. Without running a precautionary simulation, the team decides to test it, brimming with anticipation. But the test is a letdown, and the machine fails. Disheartened but not defeated, Eddie returns home, promising to give it another shot. Against all odds, Eddie's relentless efforts bear fruit, and on his next attempt, the machine finally works. Triumphantly, he takes the successful prototype back to the university lab, and his achievement sparks an outpouring of joy amongst his peers, leading to a grand celebration. Joyful festivities carry on, and Paul, the financier of this groundbreaking project, enters into a heated debate with Allister. They dispute over making their discovery public, and amidst the argument, Dr. Lilly, a notable physicist, intervenes and diverts their attention toward capturing this milestone moment in a group photo. Following the euphoria of the party, a visibly intoxicated Lilly struggles to head home due to a dead car battery. Spotting her struggle, Eddie, ever the gentleman, steps in to help, and together they flag down a taxi. Back at the now deserted lab, Dr. Allister and his fellow researcher Chen stay back working to upload this groundbreaking data onto the internet. Their solitude is interrupted by a suspicious white van pulling up outside their lab. Its arrival piques Chen's curiosity, prompting him to investigate the source of the noises. In the meantime, Eddie manages to get Lily home safely and decides to return to the lab. As he steps inside, he's greeted by a blaring alarm. The scene before him is terrifying, as Dr. Allister lay motionless with a plastic bag suffocating him, and there's no sign of Chen. To make matters worse, the reactor, left unattended, was on the verge of explosion. Despite his fear, Eddie leaps into action, and he attempts to revive Allister, but it was too late. He then turns his attention to stopping the upcoming disaster by steadying the reactor, but unfortunately, the system refuses to cooperate. And in a split-second decision, Eddie flees the scene on his bike, heading as far away as possible from the lab. The men from the white van, having completed their sinister mission, detonate the lab remotely, and the explosion devastates the lab and obliterates 8 surrounding city blocks as Eddie barely manages to escape the shockwave. In the aftermath of the catastrophe, Eddie reaches out to Paul, relaying the horrifying events. Paul, standing at a safe distance, silently observes the roaring flames that was once their beacon of hope. As dawn breaks, a scene of chaos unfolds with the arrival of the fire department, the police, and the press, all eager to uncover the truth behind the disaster. Eddie steps forward, sharing his accounts of the events with the press, and FBI agent Ford also joins the scene, embarking on his own investigation. When the veil of night descends, Paul exits a parking lot only to be confronted by Eddie and Lily, who'd been waiting for him eagerly. Paul interrogates them about the evidence found at their homes, and they both firmly deny any association with China. Paul then proposes the idea of hiring an attorney and turning themselves in to the police. But Eddie, driven by his determination to uncover the truth, declines, and he proposes that they should seek refuge at Maggie's place, who happens to be an old friend of his. Later, while at a restaurant, Eddie and Lily spot their pictures on a TV broadcast featuring a wanted poster. Eddie quickly devises a plan, and he instructs Lily to purchase 2 train tickets to an observatory, which happens to be Maggie's workplace, and he sends her off in a taxi, promising to meet her on the train. However, after Lily's departure, a bystander recognizes Eddie and alerts a nearby police officer. The tranquil scene then turns frantic as Eddie finds himself pursued by law enforcement. The chase catches the attention of Agent Ford and the FBI team, adding to the intensity. Eddie, desperate to escape, leads the chase toward a drawbridge that's in the process of opening. An officer is hot on his heels, but Eddie skillfully evades him and sends him plunging into the river below. Determined to get away, Eddie attempts to scramble under the bridge, and the FBI, desperate to capture him, order the bridge to be closed immediately. And they didn't care about the bridge operator's warnings that Eddie would be crushed. As the massive bridge descends, Eddie resourcefully jams a metal rod into the machinery, buying himself some precious time. And in the nick of time, he manages to evade the closing bridge, escaping right under the noses of the pursuing officers and the FBI. But his escape wasn't over until he spotted an approaching garbage truck, and Eddie hopped on and successfully left the scene. At the busy train station, Lily waits anxiously, scanning the crowd for Eddie. He arrives with barely a second to spare, boarding the train moments before it pulls away from the station. They journey together to Maggie's workplace, and upon hearing Eddie's explanation about his innocence in the lab tragedy, Maggie warmly welcomes them. The following day brings a significant development as Agent Ford and another FBI agent, Doyle, attend a crucial hearing. And the attendees include some of the highest-ranking Senate officials, and Paul, who's under investigation, delivers his statement to the committee. He maintains that all the government funding received by him is being utilized for the country's benefit. However, the FBI remains skeptical of Paul's narrative. They proceed with surveillance measures around his house and intensify their investigation. The following day, Paul visits C-Systems Research Labs, a location frequented by some familiar faces from the committee. And the FBI arrive on the scene as well, but their efforts to unveil the ongoing activities are effectively blocked. In a significant meeting with Lyman, the head of the C-Systems Research, Paul assures him that everything is under control and pledges to apprehend Eddie by the end of the day. It appears that C-Systems Research has stolen the reactor, but they're unable to get it working. And the plot thickens as it's revealed that Paul is the mastermind, providing cover for the C-Systems Research actions. A call interrupts Paul's dealings, and it's Eddie calling from a payphone. But before their conversation concludes, the FBI locates Eddie. This triggers a pursuit with police chasing Eddie to the observatory, and he quickly grabs Lily and they begin a frantic escape. Their run leads them to the rooftop, where an officer corners them. However, a helicopter carrying C-System Research henchman arrives, eliminating the officer. In the ensuing chaos, Eddie seizes the opportunity to take the fallen officer's weapon, and they rush downstairs with the police hot on their heels. And spotting a police snowmobile, they hop on and manage to evade their pursuers. When the menacing helicopter follows them, they leave the snowmobile in motion with a bag on the gas pedal, creating a diversion. Eddie and Lily seek shelter in an abandoned house, offering them a chance to recuperate and warm up. After sharing a meal, Eddie goes to inspect the garage for any useful items. Meanwhile, Ford and Doyle pay a visit to Paul at his house, questioning him about the recent phone conversation with Eddie. Paul insists that he merely advised them to surrender to the police, but the FBI agents confront Paul about his shady financial activities, highlighting his utilization of both obvious and secret accounts. They then warn him that obstructing an FBI investigation is a federal crime, and Eddie and Lily are now the main suspects in the murder of an officer as well. The following day, Paul confronts Lyman, angered at Lyman's decisions to have the officer killed. Paul reveals that he never intended for Eddie to be framed, but in Lyman's view, Eddie has seen too much and is no longer required. However, Paul strongly disagrees with Lyman's decision, believing that Eddie is the only one who can operate the machine successfully. Back at the abandoned house, Eddie works diligently on repairing a broken car, and suddenly they're interrupted by intruders. Racing back to the house, Eddie manages to subdue one of them with his gun. However, another assailant catches him off guard and begins to strangle him, and Lily intervenes, knocking the intruder unconscious, and the pair make their escape again. As morning dawns, Eddie and Lily craft a clever ploy. They send a flower bouquet to Paul, cleverly concealing an encrypted message within it that discloses their next meeting location. Then comes the tense meeting at the museum, and Paul reveals himself to Eddie and Lily as the mastermind behind the entire scheme. He offers Eddie a deal: help him finish the reactor and regain his normal life. When Eddie resists, Paul leaves him in the hands of his henchmen, and Eddie fights through the men, grabs Lily, and they then make a run for it. The chase leads them to an aircraft exhibit, and Eddie attempts to hide Lily in the hatch, but unfortunately she's captured. And although Eddie manages to climb onto the airplane and evade capture, he's forced to watch Lily being taken away. And because he memorized the car's license plates, he decides to follow. Back at the C-Systems Research Lab, Lily is introduced to the team, including Chen, who was kidnapped earlier. The group demand that Lily and Chen resume their work, but Lily firmly refuses. Simultaneously, Eddie spots a golden opportunity, and a police car is idling unattended while the officers settle a nearby dispute. Seizing the moment, Eddie hops in and uses the police resource to trace the license plate number that he remembered from the car that took Lily. At the FBI HQ, the autopsy results of the slain officer reveals that he was killed by a sniper. Considering the evidence, Ford comes to the realization that Eddie can't be the killer, and he deduces that Eddie, intelligent enough to construct a reactor, wouldn't be foolish enough to leave a trail of cash at his house, a clue they had stumbled upon during an earlier search of his house. The next day, Eddie infiltrates the C-Systems research labs, clothed and disguised as one of the engineers. He navigates through a hidden tunnel, eventually emerging in an underground lab where the team was attempting to conduct a hydrogen reactor experiment. And despite their reluctance, it seems as though Lily and Chen have been coerced into cooperating, but their efforts end in failure. Paul and Lyman decide to give it another shot the following day, and catching the sight of Eddie, Lily manages to keep her cool. Lyman issues a menacing warning to Lily and Chen, making it clear that their survival hinges on their ability to get the machine up and running. After delivering his threat, he directs them back onto their living spaces, and once the coast was clear, Eddie slips back into his lab, and with a careful precision, he adjusts the machine and successfully gets it running. The following morning, the team is stunned to find the reactor functioning, and one of the scientists, Wukash, seizes the moment, claiming that he's the one that made it work. Paul instructs his team to save all the relevant data onto a disk for cross-checking with the university data, and after he handed off the disk to his assistant and retreats to his office, he's confronted by Eddie, who's been writing a message for Agent Ford. Paul admits that he's deduced that it was Eddie who fixed the reactor, and just then, Lyman and his men burst into the office. In a tense standoff, Eddie demands their freedom, arguing that he's given C-Systems research what they wanted. But Lyman, however, refuses, and Eddie resorts to shutting down the reactor and transmitting all of C-Systems' data directly to the FBI. The shutdown triggers instability in the reactor, and Eddie warns them that they only have 20 minutes before it explodes. Enraged, Lyman murders Chen, which was an act that deeply pisses off Paul, and to further escalate the situation, Lyman takes Lily hostage and demands Eddie to turn off the reactor. Against Eddie's advice, Lyman orders the scientists to cut the power supply, causing the situation to deteriorate further, leading to an evacuation order. While chaos reigns, Paul and Lyman have a heated argument, and Lyman insists on leaving Eddie and Lily behind, snidely suggesting that Paul is welcome to stay behind if he so wishes, but he wasn't going to wait around for them. As the lab goes into full lockdown, everyone scrambles to leave, trapping Lily and Eddie inside. And despite their best efforts, the guards block their escape route by quickly abandoning the lab themselves. But thanks to Eddie's resourcefulness, he and Lily find an alternative exit, only to be halted by a door. Meanwhile, Paul and Lyman make their way to an elevator, and Lyman's snide remarks about Paul's retirement was the last straw, and Paul shoots him dead. In his final act, Paul disables the lockdown, allowing Eddie and Lily a chance to escape, and swiftly leaves the area. However, before they can reach the elevator, two of Lyman's henchmen attack. Eddie manages to outsmart and incapacitate them, but one henchman recovers and engages Eddie in a brutal hand-to-hand combat. The elevator arrives, and Eddie yells for Lily to get on, and after delivering a low blow to his opponent, Eddie makes a daring leap onto the departing elevator, barely clinging on. Their escape was not a moment too soon, and as the countdown hits 0, the lab erupts in a fiery explosion, taking the lives of the lingering henchmen and any others unfortunate enough to be trapped underneath. Onlookers erupt into cheers, witnessing Eddie and Lily's miraculous escape from the tragic end. Ford arrives on the scene just as the pair emerge, thanking them for their courage and swiftly ushering them away from the devastation. If you enjoyed this video, head on over to our second channel and subscribe because we upload awesome recaps on that channel as well. I'll leave you guys the link in the description and the comment section, and I'll see you guys on the next one.